Hi, I'm Michael Roselle, and welcome to Counterpoint. Today I'm joined once again by Corbin Hosler, and today joining me for the first time ever are Emma Valez and Jason Blakeburn. Today our topic is marijuana, whether or not it should be legalized. Right now there is a ballot measure in California that will be voted on in November to legalize small personal consumption of marijuana and also allow the growing of marijuana for personal use. And then, in addition to that, allow local governments to regulate and tax the manufacture and distribution of marijuana for medical and personal use, like they already have with their medical marijuana programs. This would be an expansion of that. And there's a lot of debate about whether or not that should happen in California, and then widely it's debated about the federal government and what their role is. So I want to jump right in. Corbin, how do you feel about medical marijuana in California?
It's not legal by the federal law. Federal law trumps state law, and medical marijuana is not legalized by that. And in addition to that, it's causing a lot of problems. As far as the resources being spent there on that are not being spent elsewhere. It's not a good thing for society. And bottom line is, it's just not legal.
But shouldn't we legalize it so that we don't have to spend that money on enforcement?
I don't think telling people that it's okay to do drugs is ever a good idea.
Emma?
But don't we tell people it's okay to smoke tobacco? I mean, that's a drug. Caffeine is a drug. There are a lot of legalized drugs out there.
The
medicinal drugs.
The precedent is that those have been legal, and marijuana has never been legalized. Prohibition was a long time ago, and since then the precedent is the way that it is now is working fine. And there's
Is
no
it working
reason.
fine? Why would this ballot measure be necessary if people were satisfied with the outcomes that
I think she brings up a good
happened?
point that there's a demand for marijuana use, and especially in California where they already have medical marijuana. Isn't it a sign of the times that this has gained widespread acceptance? Jason, what do you think?
I think one of the things you have to think about, even if people want to do something, sometimes it's the purpose of the government to keep people from doing things that would potentially bring harm to society.
In what ways would marijuana bring harm to society?
I think it's a mind-altering substance. And
As are many legal substances.
True.
Percocet.
But you have to draw a line at some point. I mean, you're not saying that we should legalize heroin. So where's the line? I mean, society says tobacco's okay, caffeine's okay, heroin's not okay, cocaine's not okay, but all the things in between, aren't they a gray area?
And if we're going to use the precedent that times are changing, let's look at the way the state and local governments have been cracking down on tobacco use. How prices keep going up, taxes keep being imposed, and their sale of tobacco
I believe those are all
is
measures that
stringent.
would be instituted with this ballot measure in California. They have taken the steps to say this is going to be taxed and regulated, and I'm sure it's not going to be cheap if you want to.
That's a good point, is that this is going to provide a massive amount of tax revenue for the local governments, which in California are specifically hurting very bad. What do you say to people who say we can't live without this tax?
Well, I think you can always live without this tax, because if that's the case, why not legalize all drugs and tax them very heavily? That argument breaks down, and I don't think that you can legalize and tax what is known as a gateway drug for a reason, and tell people that's okay to do that. It leads to a slippery slope that you don't want to start going down.
Now, are you saying that marijuana itself is addictive, or that it leads to a culture of addiction?
It leads to a culture of, well, if this drug's okay, well then why not do this other drug that's one step farther? And if you even go outside the medical use of it and start using it recreationally.
Can we take that to say that even alcohol could be a gateway drug? Because once you start drinking, then you're more apt to participate in social drugs like marijuana, which could lead to other things, which, alcohol is just as dangerous of a substance to society at large. It leads to automobile accidents and all kinds of things that abuse that marijuana might not, because it's a downer where alcohol is not.
Let's shift for a moment to the federal enforcement. Jason, what do you think about the government saying, hey, California, no matter what you do, it's still illegal on a federal level, and we're going to come in and shut you down?
Well, there's precedent where you have federal law trumps state law, then there are other clauses where states have priority, but with the DEA, it's kind of hard to argue. So I mean, it's going to come down to who's going to spend the money to enforce
Right.
them.
Well, is
enforce
it going
the
to be
rules.
taken to court because the medicinal use?
The medicinal
Has
use took
not-
a
has it
long
been?
time to go through to work through the courts, but California's position has always been we can make our own laws, and the government has never agreed to that. And even now, they're just kind of turning a blind eye with the gentleman's agreement from Obama. He basically just said, "I'll tell my guys to back off." But I think when you bring in widespread use, medical marijuana is kind of set aside. I mean, there's people who can gain access to it who maybe shouldn't. But when you say, "Hey, you can grow 25 square feet of your own marijuana, you can buy it in basically weed stores," isn't that going to open it up to a much wider variety of people who are going to potentially
Yeah, it will,
be affected?
and it will. And the federal government said that they're going to enforce it. So if California passes this law regardless, when they know what the consequences are, all of a sudden we're diverting a lot of resources from the federal government to enforcing federal law that trumps state law when people think what they're doing is legal. And I'm certain that there are better ways to spend those resources.
And on the cost issue, we talk about the tax revenue that marijuana will provide, but how much will it cost to regulate the sale and growth of marijuana?
That's true. There's a cost there. I think the hope is that it would offset itself. The self-regulation, self-tax would offset itself. But let's go. Final word. We've got to wrap up. Emma, what do you say on Prop 19?
I say yes, and we'll leave it up to the federal courts to decide whether it's constitutional, or not constitutional, but legal with the federal government or not.
Corbin, should we even have marijuana as an option in California, or
No, it shouldn't be, because it just leads down a slippery slope of if this drug's okay, then why isn't this drug? And the laws we have them now have worked. They've worked for a long time, and there's no reason to change them.
I think they have worked, but
Final word,
Interesting.
have the laws worked, and should we legalize it in California?
There's always problem with the laws, and there's always problem with legalizing or keeping something illegal. I think, why should we even spend the time and capital worrying about it when we have so many more pressing issues like the healthcare crisis, immigration, and what to do with the next country in the next 50 years.
What a good way to end the show. Tune in next time for more of those topics. Today was Counterpoint with Michael Roselle, and we talked about medical marijuana. Join us next week. Thanks, guys.